Hello everyone. So today's meta principle, phases of the game are defined by their objectives. So more fully, opening or morphly. Yeah, bad joke. Okay, bear with me. In the opening you should develop all your pieces. So each phase of the game there are three, if we consider this as a phase and not a game state. So phases, openings, middle games, and end games. The opening, the middle game, the end game. So develop all your pieces. This is what you should do in the opening. In the middle game, you should reposition your pieces so that they occupy better squares and are able to be more effective. And in the end game, the king is safe, so you should activate it. So each phase of the game is defined by its own objective. And now we can move on to the associated principles. Alright guys, so for the associated principles. So first of all principles in the opening, middle game and end game, they have at their heart this meta principle, because you should remember that the phases of the game are defined by their objectives. So when you're applying principles that relate to each phase, you have to remember this meta principle. And also note that the principles differ in different game states. This was the fifth meta principle. Of course, this is clearly associated with this meta principle. Corollaries and sub-principles. So for the corollaries and sub-principles, just remember to not mix the objectives of the game. So in the opening, you don't want to play it like the middle game. In the middle game, you don't want to move your king in the center as you would in the end game. And in the end game, you don't want to keep your king tucked away where it will not contribute to the success that you could have by using all of your pieces in the end game. And because of course in the end game the king is safe, so you should use it. So just don't mix these principles, don't mix these objectives. Remember, each phase is defined by a different objective, so that's very important to keep in mind. So in this game we're going to see in the other example or other examples section, I will clearly delineate the opening, middle game and end game phases. And notice how the pieces are developed in the opening, they get redeployed in the middle game, and in the end game, black's king becomes active and helps black win the game. So without further ado, let's go through the game. So, yeah, a relatively normal queen's gambit. Some of that Tartakova action. I wonder actually what the opening... Yeah, it's called Queen's Gambit Decline. Moderate variation, normal line. Alright. So, okay, let's go forward a bit. And now with Queen e2, the opening could be said to have been completed for both sides, as both sides' rooks are connected. Technically, this is not the case for white. They're not really connected, but in one move it could be so. So, the opening has been complete. So, in the opening, you guys noticed the pieces were getting developed, right? Especially at the start of the game, right? Pieces were getting developed. More at the start. Developed. All about development. b6, preparing this bishop to be developed. All about development. Okay, and now we're in the middle game. So now notice how the pieces are relocated in the middle game. This knight is here. It's relocated to f6, maybe to d5 or to e4, where it will have more potential. So the pieces slowly get redeployed. Look at this knight coming to d5. The knight came to e5. The bishop to c4. They're slowly getting redeployed, the pieces. Knight coming to b6, etc. So yeah, the pieces are getting redeployed until we reach the end game very soon now. We're getting there. Are we there yet? And we're here. So this position is more like a queenless middle game in which there is still some danger to the king. You really can't put your king in the center and be comfortable. But in my eyes, I'd label this as an endgame, because the lack of king safety for both sides is only seemingly so. In fact, while probably not the best plan, white can go for something like king f1, king e2, king e3, king e4, and put the king in the center. So that's possible. And this is, you know, technically an endgame if we apply the rule I told you about in other videos, the Soltis rule, which is under 13 points in non-pawn value. So these are non-pawns, so the total value is 13 points according to Reinfeldt values. Yeah, that would be an endgame according to Saltus if it's under 13 points and non-pawns value. And here it slowly becomes an endgame, and surprisingly this king isn't being made use of, but soon enough you'll see what I mean. Soon enough you'll see what I mean. Look at the king, look at the black king. Notice, this is an endgame, this king is here, while this black king, look, it traversed all of this distance to get here. And when it's here, it's going to win the game. Because the endgame, you need to make use of all your pieces. And Mr. Andrew Tang, one of the most brilliant chess players, not just in terms of his speed skills, I mean, the guy is very smart, let's just put it that way. Yeah, tremendous respect for the Tang man, and here he's able to convert. We're just showing this for posterity's sake. Mr. Arm 77 played on for a bit too long there. Alright guys, so yeah, remember that each phase of the game is defined by its own objectives. So here, for example, white was not making use of their own king. If they had played the plan I was suggesting earlier, they might have won the game. Or at least drawn the game. So yeah, remember that each phase of the game is defined by its own objectives. And with that, take care guys.